I developed kidney disease back in 2008, and in 2009, I had some complications. Ended up in the hospital on life support for 4 months.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital for like a total of maybe 6.5 months. After that, I ended up doing in-center hemodialysis. It was just hard to grasp mentally. I was angry. I was very angry because I was like, oh my goodness, life just has to stop. Because when I came home on oxygen in a walker. And, I was in my 30s at the time. I started watching a lot of food shows. So it just kind of piqued my curiosity about the culinary industry. So I just decided that, hey, let me look into some schools that are near here, that offer culinary arts. I was a visual arts teacher.
Oh, wow, okay.
Before I, moved into the culinary industry. I always tell people, instead of putting art on canvas, now I put it on a plate.
Yeah.
I'm Devin Whitmire. People from South Carolina, like myself, are proud of their state and everything it has to offer. But even we don't know every nook and cranny. So we're traveling to the most charming places in the Palmetto State. Some of them you know, and some of them even we have never heard of. From Discover South Carolina, it's the Palmetto Porch. We're traveling to Abbeville for some modern food with an underground twist.
Hey, Chef, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here in Abbeville today. Can you tell me just a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I was born and raised right here in Abbeville County.
You're a native, yeah.
Yes, and been here all of my life, with the exception of when I went off to college for 2 years. I'm a mother of 3, and
superhero.
And being that I'm a former teacher, it's like I'm almost a mother of 500.
Yes. Teacher, true superhero then.
Yes.
I think teachers are super, genuinely. My sister's one, and the years that you put in and invest in kids, I have so much respect for that.
Thank you. I taught at the middle school, J.S. Wright Middle, for 10 years. I was a visual arts teacher.
Oh, wow. Tell me about young Erica. What kind of kid were you growing up in Abbeville?
Well, I will say this. In my family, I was like one of the younger cousins. And in the South, your cousins are your sisters and brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like the youngest of my generation. Well, me and my brother, we were the youngest two of our generation. So I was always like the baby of the family. Growing up here, how do I say this? My family, the family name itself, McCier, is kind of like a popular name. Mm-hmm. So, I'm following cousins who are already well known, know, and
so here she comes.
Yeah, I'm the little cousin that comes in, and it's like so many expectations of you because, you have cousins who are athletes, cousins who are, talented in different areas. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, so what do you do?
Yeah. What's your thing?
Right. But I was the artistic one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love art. And I really didn't embrace it until I, got to high school. And the next thing you know, I'm graduating, headed off to Winthrop University as an art major.
Yeah. And I went to Winthrop as well. And that art program is no joke. My roommate was in art.
Yes.
And it was intense.
Yes.
So you were kind of jumping in on the deep end there.
I really did. Being an artist was like, it's almost like you're just free. Mm-hmm. You're free, and you're free flowing, and whatever just comes out of your mind, you can just put it down, put it into your artwork. Mm-hmm. And so it was like almost a way that I was able to meditate and just let everything inside of me out and create, works of art. And it's the same way with food. Mm-hmm. It's the same exact way, when I come up with dishes now.
So growing up, what was your relationship with food?
I come from a huge family, a huge family. And the younger Erica, she was the one who every summer, along with all of her cousins, we stayed at my grandparents' house.
Uh-huh.
And we would have these huge fish fries. My grandmother was the type, I always tell people that when we were young, you would go to my grandparents' house, there were always going to be 3 things on the stove. Then that was my grandmother's biscuits, fatback, and molasses. So nobody ever, went hungry. It was always something on the stove. And my grandmother believed in taking care of the community. It was nothing for her to cook big meals. And, she was like, okay, I need for you to walk this over to, this person's house. Or I heard that, this person was sick, take them a plate, So, but food played a major part in my upbringing. Although I did not like to cook.
Really?
I did not like to cook. I really only started cooking when I, got married. And that's because I had to.
Yeah.
Married with children, now you have to cook.
Young Erica, growing up, didn't like to cook. Could she have imagined Chef Erica owning a restaurant of her own?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, when I went to culinary school, it was really just to pass the time away. It was supposed to be a hobby.
Okay.
Because remember, I was on dialysis while going to culinary school. So what I was thinking was, well, let me just, find a hobby until I get a call to get my transplant.
Can you tell me a little bit about your life before you became sick? And what was that like?
Like I said, I was a middle school art teacher, 3 children, very active. I was active in the community, also active, within the school community. Girl Scout, troop leader, cheerleading coach. And with me having 3 children who all played sports, who all played instruments, I was always on the go. Very active in my church as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, after being sick, getting out the hospital, I went through this. I went through this era of depression because I had to find myself again, and I found myself through food. I always tell people, food saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, along with my kids.
So you were on dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
You were watching cooking shows. You decided to go to culinary school. You said it was going to be a hobby for you. Here we are in your restaurant. How did we get from point A to point B?
Well, while in culinary school, I started my first business. And it was supposed to just be like a, personal chef kind of business. I would just go to people's homes, cook dinner for couples or, just small groups. Next thing you know, just doing small dinners led to large banquets. More and more people started approaching me about doing catering. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So of course I jumped out there. I started doing catering events. And the next thing you know, from feeding a couple, 2 people, now I'm up to feeding 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just happened overnight.
Yeah.
That's how I got my start. I took out a lease on this building in 2019 with the expectations of opening up actually a cooking school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was supposed to be a cooking school. I was looking for a space just to teach cooking classes. And I had been looking at this building for years, but it was occupied by Breezy Quarters, which is another business here in Abbeville.
Mm-hmm.
So after a while, I just started thinking, okay, I think this would be a cool place for a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my mind was like going back and forth. Do I want a cooking school? Do I want a restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, don't jump in so fast. Start out as a cooking school first, then move into a restaurant. But everything that I envisioned about this place being a restaurant is exactly how it is now. The black walls, the woodwork, everything
Yeah.
is how I envisioned it. So I started a series of underground dining experiences. That's where the underground comes from, in Indigenous underground dining experiences. This is how I started building revenue to build this place. Because when we first came in here, it was nothing but an open space. It was a wide open space with white walls.
Mm-hmm.
I had to come in and we had to do a lot of construction work on this place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the underground comes from. And it became pretty popular. We started off with maybe about 7 or 8 couples. Next thing you know, it started growing. Sometimes it's still kind of surreal to me because it's days that I'll walk in here when we're closed or, before the staff gets in here. And I'll sit down with my cup of coffee. And I always tell my staff, I come in here early so I can have my cup of coffee, me and God. We sit down, we have our cup of coffee. And I'm like, I sit here and I just think, okay, this is so surreal because it wasn't my plan.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my plan at all in life to become a chef, to own my own business. I never thought that I would be here. And even being a, South Carolina chef ambassador, never would have imagined all of this happening. But it took me going through that near-death experience
Mm-hmm.
with my kidney failure to finally just realize that it was necessary
Mm-hmm.
for me to go through that stage, because me going through all of that is what put me here.
Obviously, this restaurant is a really tangible way that you've seen growth in your life from that experience. How would you say you've grown as a person and what all of this has meant for you in becoming a chef and now being, like you said, a small business owner and in your community?
First of all, I would say this, being an African-American woman with a business here in this area is very humbling. There was one New Year's Day, the women in my family, we all came up here and we had a brunch. And I had an older cousin to express to me how they were just so proud that I was here. And me not really understanding why, they were so emotional about it until they told me the story. They said, well, you have to realize that when we were younger, we weren't able to come into the front doors of these buildings. And there's a back parking lot right out here. They say that they used to call that the stagecoach yard or something like that. They said the African Americans would come uptown to shop. They would have to park out here,
Mm-hmm.
In the back. The kids would stay out back and play while the parents went in the back entrances. And they were just saying, like, we're just so proud that you actually own a business in a place where we weren't even allowed to walk in the front door.
So let's talk a little bit about Abbeville, this community that you've been pretty much here your whole life. What effect do you think Indigenous Underground has had on this town?
I had a lot of people to tell me that what you're trying to do, Abbeville is not going to embrace it. And, our slogan is music, food, and culture. They were like, they are not going to. I had that, said to me so many times. And I'm just one of those people who in my mind, I'm always saying, I can show you better than I can tell you. And I just knew the vision that I had for this place. My thing is, I wanted to create an environment where people wouldn't have to leave out of Abbeville to enjoy some great food, some music, and different cultural events. I'm like, we could bring this right here to Abbeville. So I'm like, hey, we won't know if they'll embrace it until we try it. And Abbeville has really been good. They've really been good to us here. So
I'm glad.
yeah.
So you told us a little bit about where the underground part of the name came from. Can you tell us about Indigenous Underground?
Indigenous is just from, indigenous people, the indigenous culture. A lot of our food here is indigenous to South Carolina, is indigenous to the African heritage. So what we do, we just take those ingredients and just put our own little spin on them. These are the same foods that I grew up with. People come in here, they're like, oh, black eyed peas. I don't eat black eyed peas. But
They're
then
missing out.
yeah, but when I put those black eyed peas in a gumbo, they're like, oh my goodness, this is like the best gumbo, I've tasted. So it's just giving it, taking the foods that I grew up off of. Like I say, my grandfather, he farmed. We ate off the land.
Mm-hmm.
Just taking those foods and just putting a little spin on it.
What does it mean for food to be Afro-Indigenous?
For me, it's like taking two cultures and putting them together. My grandfather is a descendant of Native American, and of course my grandmother of African descent. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the foods that we grew up off of.
Mm-hmm.
Just living off the land and taking those staple, crops and just putting a modern twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When someone comes into Indigenous Underground, what are they going to see and experience?
First of all, they're not expecting to come in here with the dark walls and of course, a lot of people pass by here, they'll hear the music playing and they're like, is that a club? And I'm like, no, it's not a club. We're a restaurant. Just trying to bring something a little different to Abbeville. And of course, there's things on the menu that other restaurants in this area don't have around here.
Mm-hmm.
One of our popular dishes is the gator and grits.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, is that real alligator? I'm like, yes. I don't know where to get the fake from, but yes, it's real alligator. And just different things like I was saying about our gumbo. It's not a Louisiana style gumbo. It's one that I came up with myself. It's more of a tomato base. And I have people from Louisiana who will come in here and they will order that gumbo and they're just waiting to tell me that it's not good. It's like they're ordered they want to tell me so bad that it's not good. But it's like, yeah, I'm from Louisiana and this is some good gumbo.
Yes.
And another one is the soul rolls, which is a spring roll.
I love those.
With the collard greens and black eyed peas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are so good. I've had the gator bites too.
Okay.
That was the first time I tried alligator was here.
Oh,
I had the gator bites.
yeah.
So good. You had the opportunity to represent the state as a chef ambassador. Considering your journey from teaching to becoming a chef and then opening a restaurant and now sharing your food with your community and beyond, what did that experience mean for your story?
I think becoming a chef ambassador, it was kind of like, it was shocking at first because here it is, former teacher in little old Abbeville. I'm like, how did these people find me? That was the thing. I'm like, how did y'all even find me in little old Abbeville? Don't know who nominated me or anything like that. But it's one thing about being in a small community, a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Some people think that's a bad thing, but it can also be a blessing because then you all become family. So when I became a chef ambassador, it wasn't even about me. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't. It wasn't about me. It was about Indigenous Underground and Abbeville, South Carolina. Because once people start saying that, once you become chef ambassador, people are just going to start flooding into your restaurant. So even though they come in here, I'm always promoting other businesses. I'm like, oh, you need to check out Divine Your Space. You need to go down here to the bakery. You need to go over to the Opera House. I'm like sending them everywhere. We want people to come into this community, make a day of it, see what we have to offer.
You're such an advocate for your community. And I know that your fellow business owners and your community really, really appreciate.
I mean, I love our little town. I really do. And maybe it's just the country girl in me, but I love that it's peaceful here. And I love that everybody's just so helpful. We look out for each other. And it's just home.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to so many other people who come and they visit from like Columbia, Charlotte, Atlanta. That's one thing I can say about being a chef ambassador. It has brought in so many different people from so many bigger cities. And those people that come from big cities, I say, well, hey, make sure you just walk around.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, it's so peaceful here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind visiting the big cities, but I always want to come back home and just be at peace. Yeah, and that's what Abbeville is. It's a peaceful little town with a lot of love.
To learn more about this and all the towns we're featuring on the show, visit scpalmettoporch.com. The Palmetto Porch is produced by Discover South Carolina in partnership with Pod People. Special thanks to our production team at Pod People, Lauren Luco, Ben Sauls, Lauren Sauls, Grace Pina, and Kim Wong.